All right, hey everybody, welcome back. It's another lesson video connecting to lesson 14 of our reading unit this report period. Back into Percy Jackson and Lightning Thief. This time with chapter 4. We're not connecting to other texts, so it's the only text that you need this time. And before this lesson, you should have read chapter 4. So make sure if you haven't, you go back and watch and listen to the audiobook video and read along with the text or read the text on your own to make sure you have a good understanding of what's happening in the chapter. It's an action-packed one. It's exciting, thrilling. There's a chase scene and there's monsters and fighting, and so it's a fun one. And we're gonna dive right in with a familiar lesson. Great. So, like I said, this is lesson 14. This is the Lightning Thief, chapter 4, and our goal today is to get better at explaining and drawing inferences from a text. And the reason why we're doing this is because as we become more and more advanced readers, authors won't always give away information about how characters are feeling, what they're doing, why they're acting the way that they're acting, why they say certain things. They're not going to say, the author's not going to tell us exactly why characters are doing what they're doing. We have to use what we read in the text and what we already know about life, the world, people, to make some smart guesses about why characters are acting the way they're acting and why certain things are happening the way that they're happening and why the authors did certain things. And so it's just a skill that needs a lot of practice of making smart guesses using different pieces of information in the text to help us understand and putting it all together to make the best guess that we can. And so that's what we're going to be doing today. Lots and lots of inferences. Great. We'll do what we always do, go through some vocabulary, get our brain activated. The thinking questions today will not connect to the exit ticket. They're not going to lead up to it, but they are going to be 4 questions that ask us to make inferences using details from the text. And so it'll get us a lot of practice. So when you go to do it for your exit ticket, you guys should feel pretty secure, pretty confident. Let's do it. The first word for vocabulary is falter. There's a fly in here, go away. Falter, which means to move, speak, or act in a way that is not sure or not steady. Sometimes this happens when you're not confident in what you're about to say, so you might stutter or you might just stop and freeze for a second. That's what falter means. Deliberate is the second word. It means said or done on purpose. If someone is doing something to be deliberate, they're doing it and they meant to do it. They didn't do it on accident. The third word is pummeling, which means striking heavily with or as if with the fists, a sword, or a club, meaning just if you've ever seen a boxing match or an MMA fight, something like that, when someone is down on the ring and the other person is just that is pummeling. Number 4, the word is agony, which means great or intense pain and suffering in the mind or body. Agony is just like pain, but the top level of pain. If you've ever broken a bone, that gets up there pretty high of just needing to want to pass out and make the pain go away. That can also be in your mind if you're just like really confused about something, or there's a really loud sound. It can sometimes fill your mind or your body with agony. Number 5, the word is flailed, which means moved or waved wildly. It's like, if you can see the camera, just flailing is moving around without control. Number 6, the word is disintegrate, which means to break down into parts or pieces. If you've ever seen something be lit on fire, just a piece of paper, and it goes and vanishes into a puff of smoke, that's what disintegrating is. And then these last 2 are less important, but good things to know so you're not confused as you're reading. The word is lanolin, which is a fatty substance extracted from sheep's wool and used as a lubricant in soap, cosmetics, and ointments. You'll see this word mentioned one time in the book, and it has a certain smell. If you've ever been to a petting zoo or the zoo, the petting area of the zoo where there's goats and sheep and other animals like that have wool, that has this very characteristic smell, and that's what lanolin is. And then the last word is chassis, or chassis, the frame that supports the body and engine in a vehicle. It's when we think of a car, the way the shape that it is, that's what we think of as the chassis. The chassis is made up of the car is made up of a whole bunch of different parts. It's got engines, it's got wheels, but the main body of the car, that is the chassis. Awesome. So to get our brains activated and connected to what we read about already, today's reading, Percy faces a monster, the Minotaur. What are some monsters that you have read about or seen in movies? So take a moment to answer this. Pause the video. Great. Now that you're back, I can list countless monsters. I love fantasy stuff, so I've seen ogres, I've seen dragons, I've seen, I mean, I can list a bunch of cockatrices. There's so many that I've seen that I can't even go to list all of them. So I just can't wait to see what your most interesting and likable ones are. Great. So again, what we're doing today for each one of these thinking questions is practicing making inferences. There's a certain a question that the answer is not directly in the text. We have to use the text and what is happening there to help us understand, and then make the best guess that we can based on the information that is in the text and the information that we already know from our own lives and from what's going on in the story. And so we're going to do that a few times, and then we'll have a one question at the end. Before we do that, I'm going to just do a quick reminder of what inferences are. Let me just make this super fast. We've seen this a bunch when we talked about inference. Again, inference is a smart guess. To make that smart guess, we use two things: schema, which is things that we already know, and a detail, which is any kind of information from a text. Okay. You've seen this a bunch, where we take a detail from the text, we add it to our schema, and then we make the inference. I've used this example a bunch of times, but the thing I want to focus on today is this right here. Keep reading and reevaluate. And what I mean by this is, today a lot of the inferences are going to come from why characters did certain things, and we can only make smart guesses about why they did it if we know what actually is going on in the text, what's happening, who's doing what. And so while we're reading, that you'll see for these questions that the detail might be in one paragraph, but then the events leading up to that detail are in a different paragraph, and you really need to understand what's happening in the first paragraph to make a smart guess about what is asked about in the second paragraph. And so that can go away. We don't need this right now. And so I'll give you, when we go through this, I'm going to do this first one as an example of this before you try to do it on your own. So if you want to do it on your own right now, go ahead and pause the video and you can try it. But I'm actually just going to go right into it. So I'm on page 50 of the book. I'm going to give the electronic page right now. And so it's not the electronic page. It's the electronic is not page 50. It's page 55 in the electronic. So let me put that up there. I should change this too. Man, this is stuff that should already have been done. I apologize. On page 50 or 55 electronic. Okay, so on this page, it begins, his neck was a massive muscle. Why did the author include this paragraph? Okay, and so it's asking us to make a guess about why the author put some information in the text. We're not the author, so we don't know the reason, but we can make a smart guess. So let's go back and reread this paragraph. It says right here, his neck was a mass of muscle and fur leading up to his enormous head, which had a snout as long as my arm, snotty nostrils with a gleaming brass ring, cruel black eyes, and horns, enormous black and white horns with points you couldn't get from an electric sharpener. And so in this paragraph, it's describing the look of this monster. Right? It's describing what its head and its upper body looked like. And so I think the author included this. In order to understand why the author includes this, we have to actually look behind it and in front of it. Behind it, again, I'll just read it quickly. It says, glancing back, I got my first cool look at the monster. He was 7 feet tall, easy, his arms and legs like something from the cover of Muscle Man magazine, bulging biceps and triceps and a bunch of other steps all stuffed like baseballs under vein-webbed skin. He wore no clothes except underwear. I mean, bright white Fruit of the Looms, which would have looked funny except that the top half of his body was so scary. Coarse brown hair started at about his belly button and got thicker as it reached his shoulders. And so here, the author is describing what this monster looks like, its upper body, and how massive and strong looking and scary this monster is. And so this paragraph goes on to continue the description and describes, instead of just the body, but what his head actually looks like. And with this description, now we can tell exactly what the animal is, or what the monster is, and so can Percy. He says, I recognize the monster, all right? He had been in one of the first stories Mr. Bruni told us, but he couldn't be real. And then even down here, he goes on to try to say it, but he's the Min. And since we read Theseus and the Minotaur, we know that this author here is describing a Minotaur. But if we took this part out, we maybe might guess that it's the Minotaur, but it could just be some really hairy, strong, muscular guy. But in this paragraph, I want to get rid of the X. Whoops. I can erase that now. Yeah. Eraser. Come to me. There we go. In this paragraph, we get the description of his big snout, the giant horns, and that tells us that this is the Minotaur. And so that's why it needed to be included. Even though it never actually says the name Minotaur, we had to make the smart guess and use what we already knew from Theseus and the Minotaur to make that smart guess. So the author included this paragraph so that we and Percy could know that the monster was the Minotaur. I guess the Minotaur, the Minotaur should be capitalized. It's just the one. The paragraph describes its huge head and sharp horns. Without the paragraph, we couldn't be sure about what monster Percy was facing. Cool. So that's why that paragraph is there. It gives us the information that we needed to know that this is the Minotaur and what it looks like. Awesome. Next one. Where did the bull man come from? How do you know? So this is kind of a very open-ended question. Coming from can mean a whole bunch of different things. So make sure that whatever answer that you give, that you base it from the text. Okay. Take a moment now, pause the video. Awesome. Now that you're back, I think there's a couple of different responses that you can give to this. The first you could say is it came from Greek mythology. I'll make sure I'm on the right screen here. Yeah. It came from Greek mythology. We know the Minotaur from Theseus and the Minotaur story. That story took place during Greek mythological times, and so you could say that it came from Greek mythology. But there's not a ton of evidence there, except for possibly the evidence that I used right here. I recognize the monster, right? He had been one of the first stories Mr. Brunner had told us. And we know that Mr. Brunner had been teaching them about Greek and Roman mythology and Latin. So that might be where you can take from. But I'm actually going to go a little bit of a different route and go here. I have two thoughts. So right here it says, oh, nobody much. Sorry, who's after me? Oh, nobody much, Grover said, obviously still miffed about the donkey comment. Just the Lord of the Dead and a few of his bloodthirstiest minions. And so early in the chapter, Grover tells Percy that the Lord of the Dead is after him. And we know from the books that have been passed that the Lord of the Dead in Greek mythology is Hades. So possibly the Minotaur has come from Hades, because he's the Lord of the Dead, and Grover tells us that the Lord of the Dead is after him. And could also guess that the women that he saw 2 chapters ago in chapter 2, those weren't old ladies, Grover said. Those were the fates. Do you know what it means, the fact that they appeared in front of you? They only do that when someone's about to die. Whoa, you said who? And so it turns out that they saw the fates in chapter 2. Maybe the fates sent the Minotaur because they decided that Percy was going to die, and this is the way that they were going to do it. And so I think those are 2 possibilities. Again, I don't know for certain because we can't know for certain because the information is not all here, but these are the smartest guess that we can make. So I'm going to say I think the bull man came from either Hades or from the fates. I think this because Grover tells Percy that the Lord of the Dead is after him right before the Minotaur shows up. Grover also tells Percy that since he saw the fates, he was likely going to die. So maybe the fates sent the Minotaur to kill Percy. Awesome. So, again, we don't know for certain where it came from. If you said that it came from Greek mythology, that's smart too. Both of these things, the Fates and Lord of the Dead, Hades, are from Greek mythology, so you can add that in. Now, the next question says, why can't Percy's mother cross the property line to the summer camp? What clues support your answer? So in these last two questions, we just explained our thinking. We did and paraphrased our thoughts from the text. But here it says, what clues? So we should give direct evidence from the text. So go ahead and pause the video, take some time to go back in the text, answer this question, and let's come back with a smart guess with evidence from the text to support it. Awesome. Here we go. There's a couple different pieces of information that we can use here. I've marked a few of them. So right here, he says, he doesn't want us, meaning the Minotaur, my mother told me. He wants you. Besides, I can't cross the property line. But we don't have time, Percy. Go, please. I got mad, then mad at my mother, at Grover the goat, at the thing with horns that was lumbering toward us slowly, deliberately, like a bull. I climbed across Grover and pushed the door open into the rain. We're going together. Come on, Mom. I told you. And she says, I told you, and she was going to say, I told you I can't cross the property line. Mom, I'm not leaving you. Help me with Grover. And so right there, I think it's not incredibly clear why she can't cross, but it seems like it's complicated because she says, we don't have time, Percy. And he says, it seems like he can cross, but she can't. And so she must not have something, or she must not be something, that would allow her to cross over this line. And so, again, it's unclear about what it is exactly, but we can make the guess that whatever it is, she does not have, or she is not the thing that can cross. Here with additionally it says, I've been worried about an attack for a long time. I should have expected this. I was selfish keeping you near me. Keeping me near you, but now again, it doesn't give us a lot of information here. But again, it seems that Percy's mom knows something about Percy that he doesn't know about himself. And so there must be something that Percy has, or something that Percy is, that allows him to cross this line that Mom does not have. And so I'm thinking in the very beginning of the book, the very first page, Percy mentioned about being a half-blood. So maybe it's a certain kind of blood that he doesn't have, that she doesn't have, that she can't cross, that he can. So again, this is a guess, which is I think Percy's mother can't cross the property line because she doesn't have or isn't something that she needs, that she knows about Percy that will let her cross the line. I think this because the text says, make sure you put your comma and then quotation marks. Let's go up here again. I'm going to just use a, he doesn't want us, my mother told me. He wants you. Besides, I can't cross the property line. Can I copy this? That would be awesome if I can just copy and paste right here. All right, I'm going to do a couple backspaces. There we go. Go, please. So this tells me that Percy's mother knows she can't cross, but Percy can. And the reason is too complicated to explain in a short amount of time. Because they're about to be shish kebabbed. Alright. So again, we don't know for certain why she can't cross the property line, but we can make a smart guess. She must not have or be something that Percy is. Alright. Last question. Again, one more inference, a smart guess based on what the text is saying. Why does Percy say, I knew there was hope, when Grover says, food? What clues from the text or your life support your answer? So pause the video, go back into the text, find where it says this, and try to figure out why Percy says it. All right, dive back in. This is way earlier in the chapter. Oop, not that far though. Aha. And so when I was talking earlier about needing to know what's happening in the chapter before this line in order to understand why Percy says what he says, we have to read all the way back. And so here's the line. It says, he was slumped over, blood trickling from the side of his mouth. I shook his furry hip, thinking, no, even if you are half barnyard animal, you're my best friend and I don't want you to die. Then he groaned, food, and I knew there was hope. And so, in short, he thinks Grover is dead. But then when Grover talks, right, he knows there was hope that he was still alive. The food thing is a big thing for Grover because we know Grover, from a couple of different examples, really likes to eat. You see him asking for different food in every chapter before this. But to truly understand this, just need to know what happens ahead of time back here. Remember here, this is the big thing. And our car exploded. Right? The car blew up. There was a blinding flash, boom. And then this is a car accident. And there was them trying to just like figure out where they were after the car accident. So a car accident has happened. And so Percy thinks that Grover has died. And when he hears him say food, he knows that, oh, okay, he's not dead. He's alive and talking. And so I'm going to use this evidence here to show that he was afraid, that Percy was afraid that Grover was dead. All right. Percy says this because he was afraid that Grover had died in the car accident. I know this because it says, yeah, I just took the evidence right from the text and pasted it on here. Yeah. This shows that Percy was worried that Grover hadn't survived the accident, but when Grover spoke, Percy knew he was alive. Awesome. So it might be like a really simple guess, like, oh, of course he said I knew there was hope because he wasn't dead. But it doesn't say that right in the text. It doesn't say Percy was afraid that Grover was dead. You have to make the smart guess when he says, no, I don't want you to die. It's like, oh, he was afraid that he was actually dead after the car accident. All right, cool. So you've gotten a whole bunch of practice making inferences based on different things in this chapter. And so one last inference, which is the very end of the chapter, and it says, read the first full paragraph on page 56. And so it's 56 of the book, but in the electronic version, it is page number 61. All right, 61. So, oh man, page 56, so it seems like we're just adding 5 pages to everything. 61 of the Lightning Thief. So what can you infer about the man that appeared on page 61 of Lightning Thief? And so I'm going to point back to the text that you can look at, then you answer your question, pause it and come back, and then we'll talk about it. So here's the man. It says, the last thing I remember is collapsing on a wooden porch, looking up at a ceiling fan circling above me, moss flying around a yellow light, and the stern faces of a familiar-looking bearded man and a pretty girl, her blonde hair curled like a princess's. They both looked down at me, and the girl said, he's the one. He must be. Silence, Annabeth. the man said. He's still conscious. Bring him inside. Go ahead and pause the video, do your best to answer the question, and when you come back, we'll go over each answer choice. All right, now that you're back, let's take a look. We don't know who the man is, but based on the way he responds to Annabeth and what she says, we can make a smart guess about him. So, he is a god visiting from Mount Olympus. Hey, he might be. We don't know. There's not a lot of evidence from the text that would say that he was or wasn't. It just doesn't really mention anything about Mount Olympus or gods or him doing something godly, and so he could be, but not the smartest guess. We don't have any evidence to back it up. Number 2 says he was saved from the bull monster by Percy. We didn't see Annabeth or this man in or around the Minotaur at all, so it doesn't seem like Percy saved him. Even though he killed the Minotaur, it doesn't seem like this person was in any kind of danger. He is upset about what happened to Percy's mother. Could be, but again, doesn't mention anything about him being upset about Percy's mom. He doesn't say a word about it. Now here it says he does not want Percy to know something about himself. This makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense because right here Annabeth says, I'm guessing it's Annabeth because it sounds Annabeth. The girl said, he's the one. He must be. The one what? Okay, so Percy doesn't know. We don't know. But apparently Annabeth knows what he is, the one. But this man tells Annabeth to be quiet because he's still conscious, which means he's still awake. And so that's clear that he doesn't want Percy to know something that Annabeth knows about him. And that's why he says silence. Like, shut up, Annabeth. Stop talking. He's still awake. Wait till he's asleep, and then we can talk some more. And so, hello. This is the best choice. He does not want Percy to know something about himself because he tells Annabelle to be quiet so that Percy doesn't find something else out. All right, now, which detail from the text best supports the response to part A? And so, again, the best choice, without even looking at all these, is he tells her to be quiet so that Percy doesn't find something else. And so let's look for that. The last thing I remember is collapsing on a wooden porch. Doesn't match up. The stern faces of a familiar-looking bearded man and pretty girl. Doesn't match. They both look down at me. Doesn't match. Aha. Silence, Annabeth. The man said. He's still conscious. And this is how we know that this man doesn't want Annabeth spilling the beans about who or what Percy is. Maybe it's the same who or what that lets him cross the property line that Percy's mother can't. We don't know, but we can make a smart guess using what the text says. Awesome. I hope that was a lot of helpful practice on getting better at making inferences. Again, you make inferences by using what you already know and what the text says to make a smart guess. And you do that because the only way you can truly understand a story is by taking the clues that the author gives you and doing the best kind of guessing you can from them so that the story makes sense and you can understand the characters and why they do what they do. We can't wait to pick up and find out who this man is, what they know about Percy, and where did this Minotaur come from as we continue to read. Enjoy your day.